So let's continue with new transportation today. We've worked on new types of transportation like Conestoga wagons yesterday. Conestoga wagons are great because they can hold 2,000 pounds of stuff inside. And of course, we're making a lot more products with our industrial revolution. We've got to have a way to ship them places. And Conestoga wagons are great for that. Named for the Conestoga River in Lancaster County, not far from here. So Conestoga wagons can rumble, 8, 9, 10 miles a day. 6 oxen typically would pull them. So this is all good. Roads are improving. We're able to build roads to new places that we couldn't go before. This is the Macadam Road that we saw yesterday. The road building is slow and expensive. Even a corduroy road that's not nearly as expensive as Macadam is still kind of expensive and takes a long time to build. Most of our big cities in America are located on rivers or big water. It's been the history of the world that cities develop along water. River cities, river civilizations, all big civilizations before the early 1800s were built along water. It's true in our original 13 colonies. Just look at all these cities, these dark dots, built along big water, the Chesapeake Bay, the Atlantic Ocean, or big rivers that go inland, like the Mississippi River, which has New Orleans, Natchez, and St. Louis. Nashville, Tennessee, along the Columbia River, several rivers along the Ohio River, some cities across the big lakes. It's all pretty big stuff. So canals that can connect those cities by land could be an even better idea than roads. If a Conestoga wagon can carry a couple thousand pounds of material for 8 or 9 miles a day, well, a canal could be even better because on a canal boat, you could put 40 tons of equipment or materials or products. You could have a couple of mules pull them along a canal and they could move 24 hours a day. So this could be a big step forward. Of course, the trouble is going to be building canals is really tough. The most famous of all those canals is known as the Erie Canal that connects the Great Lakes to the Hudson River. You'll watch a video about this in a little bit about how they made some of the canal, how they built it. A huge, huge undertaking. Here's a picture of the Erie Canal, and you can see the canal boat traveling with a lot of stuff inside it. Probably people can pay to ride on the boat as well. There are some horses or mules pulling the boats along a canal towpath. Canals don't have their own current. It's not a river, and so you need something to make the boat move. There aren't waves or tides on a canal. You do flood them from a river nearby. That's where the water comes from. So usually canals are built very close to rivers to get their water source. But once the canal is filled, the boats can go under the power of horses or probably mules because they're cheaper. This is a picture of Governor DeWitt Clinton celebrating the finishing of the Erie Canal. He has a bucket of water from Lake Erie. He is dumping it into the Hudson River, kind of symbolically that we've conquered the idea of moving, of opening the canal and moving boats across New York without having to go a whole way up around Canada and back into New York Harbor. One problem with the Erie Canal that has to be solved is what do you do when there's, the Great Lakes are about 300 feet higher in elevation than the Hudson River. Well, some brilliant engineers figured out a way to build locks. And so you essentially build stair steps for boats where you'll open the doors here, the water will be at a low level. Put your boat in the lock, fill it with water until it gets to the next height, open the next doors, fill that with water so it lifts the boat. And over a number of series of locks, you eventually can change the elevation. In our area, there was the Susquehanna and Tidewater Canal that paralleled the Susquehanna River. You probably know that York County and Adams County have a pretty strong connection to the Baltimore area, and that canal is why. I mean, how many students in Southwestern School District have lived in Maryland at some point? There are a lot of Baltimore Orioles fans and Baltimore Ravens fans, people who have lived in Baltimore or Baltimore County or Carroll County who have moved here. We've always had a very strong connection to the Baltimore area because of that canal, much stronger than our connection to Philadelphia, which only had railroad, which comes much later than canals. Not a whole lot of connection to Pittsburgh, where if you were going to travel there, you'd have to use different canals to get yourself out to the Appalachian Mountains, where, believe it or not, they would take the canal boats off the canals, put them on a railroad, and have the railroad move the canal boats to where they could be plopped back in a canal and then continue west. So our area has always been a pretty strong connection to Baltimore because of the Susquehanna and Tidewater Canal. There today, it's a public park. You can see some of the canal remains here. Canal only needs to be 4 or 5 feet deep, maybe 16 or 20 feet wide, although that's a lot of work to dig that. Today, our Susquehanna Tidewater Canal Park is over by the Susquehanna River. You can go there and see the place. Be careful. Sometimes there's water in it, and sometimes when there's not water in it, it's full of snakes because the snakes like the water. This is a picture of a canal today. It's not being used as a canal anymore, but here the tow path is still here that the horses or mules would walk on. Today we use them for exercise trails pretty often. These people are walking. You can be running, riding your bike, maybe even riding horses on a canal tow path. Well, canals are great, but what about rivers? We have a big change in rivers. You'll see this Native American in his birch bark canoe paddling his way along a river. Well, in the early 1800s, we have this brilliant invention of a thing called a steamboat with a big paddle wheel on it. Now, before steamboats came along, you could really only deliver goods going downstream on a river. It's really hard to go upstream. This guy has to paddle pretty hard to get just himself and this very lightweight boat upstream. This is a cover of a book. It says Abe Lincoln gets his chance. We know Abraham Lincoln at least twice in his life made a trip down the Mississippi River on a flatboat, which really is just a bunch of logs tied together. And then farmers would put their products or whoever else on these boats. They'd pay somebody to travel down the Mississippi River to New Orleans to sell their goods. Then you just disassemble the log raft, and then you walk back to where you came from. Well, with the invention of a steamboat, this is all going to change because now a boat can go upriver on its own power. This is a picture of the first steamboat called the Clermont. A man from York County, Pennsylvania, in the Lancaster County area named Robert Fulton invented this. We know how to make machines work from the Industrial Revolution. Well, Robert Fulton figured out a way to make a machine work on a boat, which is really brilliant. Here's his first boat, the Clermont. He is such a big name for us, Robert Fulton is, that he is one of our 2 statues in the United States Capitol building. U.S. Capitol has invited every state to bring or to send a statue of important people, and they're spread all throughout the U.S. Capitol building. One of Pennsylvania's statues is Robert Fulton. So he's sitting in a chair. He's holding a model of his steamboat in his lap. The idea, though, the steamboat is that we can now have a boat go upriver on its own power, and that is going to be a super big change. Robert Fulton has a county in Pennsylvania named for him, Fulton County. My nieces and nephews go to school there at Southern Fulton schools. Real tiny school district. Robert Fulton is a big name. What about oceans? So we have canals, we have river transportations have big change. What about ocean transportation? This kind of boat is a new type of boat invented in the early 1800s called a clipper ship. We won't talk about that too much now because you're going to watch a video about this. A video made by a high school kid who is showing, I guess he did it as a class project, but it's pretty good, so I'll have you watch it. You can see the boat is long and thin, lots and lots of almost square or rectangular sails. They're called clippers because they move at a really fast clip, a really fast pace across the Atlantic Ocean. In fact, things have changed so much from the Christopher Columbus days. It took Columbus 9 weeks to get from Europe to America. With a clipper ship moving so fast, the time to travel is 3 weeks from Europe to America. They actually invented these ships specifically for the tea trade, to move tea from China and India to different parts of the world much faster. Makes the price of tea go way down, and people can afford to drink more of it. Well, water transportation is great. Canals and steamships on rivers and clipper ships on the ocean. Railroads are going to be the next step, and they're going to be even better still, but that's another story for another day. So for right now, we're making big, big changes in transportation because of our industrial revolution. We can make more products. We need to be able to transport them places where we can sell them. And so roads and highways are a big deal. Water transportation is a big deal. And eventually, railroads will replace all of them and become a big deal on its own.